What is up, everyone? My name is Michael Pohl with Bay Area Aquatics, and today we're going to be talking about what types of food you should feed your fish. So before we get into the specific types of food and specific type of ingredients, one of the things that gets overlooked the most is the fact that you should be feeding your fish a variety of food. You don't want to feed the same food over and over your fish. You want to mix it up a little bit. So for me personally, I feed my fish 6 days a week, Tuesday through Sunday. I usually fast them on Monday because I change my waters on Sunday. What I feed during those 6 days is a mixture of frozen and dry foods. I usually feed frozen food 3 days a week and then dry foods the other 3 days. So for me personally, as far as frozen foods, I feed bloodworms, brine shrimp, and then an emerald entree, I think is what it's called, which is an herbivore diet. It's kind of like a mixture of a bunch of different stuff. And then for dried foods, this is kind of a mixture of what I feed. There's some more foods that I normally have. I'm out of stock of a couple of them and I just haven't had a chance to order any. But these are quality foods that I think are readily available. They're not the highest quality foods by any means, but they're definitely not like a cheap, PetSmart type of thing. But most of these are actually, in fact, I think all of them except for the Sarah food is available at PetSmart. I personally like having food that's available at stores like that just because if for some reason I run out or I thought I had an extra thing on the shelf, it's easy to go get some. I don't have to like special order it and wait 2 weeks for it to get here type of deal. It's just a staple food that's always there, always available, and it's relatively cheap. It's not like super expensive. So one of the things you're gonna wanna look for when you're buying a fish food is quality ingredients. You're gonna wanna stay away from things like fish meal, wheat meal, soybeans, things like that. That's a lot of fillers, and what that's gonna do is that's gonna create a lot of waste from your fish. Your fish have trouble digesting that, which is gonna make your waters real cloudy. It's gonna have to make you maintain your tank a lot more. So even though a nicer food is gonna be $2 or $3 more than like a cheap food, it's only $2 or $3, it's gonna last you a long time, and it's gonna cut down your maintenance and the dirtiness of your tank. So when you're looking at ingredients, you're gonna wanna look for things like salmon, halibut, shrimp, krill, algae, kelp, things like that as the first couple of ingredients, because that's going to be the majority of your food. So you want some solid first ingredients, and then if you get a little bit of preservatives like wheat meal or whatever like that, that's not as big of a deal. Some higher end foods like rapashi don't have those fillers. Frozen foods obviously don't have those fillers, but I like the nutritional content of pellets and flakes and things like that. So I think it's worth having a little bit of fillers just so I can get additional nutrients to my fish. You're also gonna wanna look at what type of fish you have so you know what type of fish food to buy. So my mollies and platies in this tank behind me are kind of an herbivore. They eat a lot of like algae and they graze and they'll pick around the tank. So I kind of feed them a little bit of everything. Things like my shrimp are bottom feeders, so I'm feeding them the sinking pellet by omega-1 usually. And then I have fish like my betta fish. Betta fish are very carnivorous. They like a meaty diet, so things like bloodworms, brine shrimp, and then having like a betta pellet that's pretty solid is gonna help just cater to their needs a little bit better than just feeding a general thing. They'll be fine on like a freshwater flake or pellet, but having a very meaty pellet will help the betta's diet. One of the other things that I like to stock on hand is this One Seaweed. It's super cheap. It's like $5 or $6 a packet. It's got 24 sheets of seaweed, which are this big. So there's 24 of them in here. I only feed about a third of the seaweed to my tanks at a time. It's a fairly messy food. It'll kind of fall apart in the tank after a couple hours, but the snails like it, the shrimp really like it. It's supposed to be made for like things like the mollies and the platies too. My mollies and platies don't really like it. They'll kind of leave it be. And that kind of leads me into my next thing is whether or not your fish is going to eat it. I know a lot of people go out and buy this type of food and their fish just won't eat it. They go, oh, well, this is a quality food. It only eats the low quality stuff and my fish won't eat it. What do I do? My suggestion to that is usually fast the fish 2 or 3 days, see if they'll eat it then. If they don't, maybe another day or two, but after that I'd start looking into getting another food. If they're eating a cheap food, and that's all they're gonna eat, that's better than nothing. It's much better to have a fish that's eating food that's alive than a fish that just won't eat anything and just dies in 2 weeks because it's starving itself to death. For me, one of those examples is these Sarah tablets. These are really, really recommended by Aquarium Co-op, so I decided to buy, this is like $4 on Amazon to get like 24 tabs of them. My fish won't eat it, they won't touch it. It'll sit in the bottom of the tank, it dissolves, it gets all over the tank, it starts to grow, and then I have to go in and I have to gravel back. That causes a lot of tank issues, and that's just not a good food in my opinion. Even though everyone that I talk to says it's one of the best foods on the market, my fish don't eat it. So for me, it just rots in the tank and it just becomes nitrates and ammonia, and that turns it into a not good food. The last thing you're going to want to look for is how quick that food sinks to the bottom. If you've got fish that only feed off the surface and you have a quick sinking food, that's probably not the best food because they're not going to eat most of it and then it's going to rot in the bottom of your tank. If you've got fish that are at the bottom and you've got a pellet that'll sit there for 2 hours before it drops, that's starting to dissolve and create waste in your tank for those 2 hours before it drops. And that's also not a very good food. You're gonna want something a little more quick sinking. A lot of people also do things like make their own food, feed veggies, things like that. I'll feed my snails some like lettuce or spinach or a cucumber or something like that. Occasionally, I don't do it too often simply because I don't have the time to sit here and make fish food or make things like that. Like I said, I wanted things that are quick, readily available. You could take a day off and make a ton of it, just throw it in your freezer. But for me, I just don't have enough tanks to really do that. Don't have special fish per se that are very, very picky on a diet. Most of these are pretty common fish. And for me, it just wasn't worth it. I'm gonna go ahead and leave a link to every single food that I feed except for the frozen stuff because they don't ship that very well. Down in the description below, there'll be Amazon affiliate links. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but I get a slight kickback from it. Let me know what you're feeding your fish. I wanna know it in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a thumbs up. If you disliked it, leave a thumbs down. That's totally okay with me. Also be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I'll leave links in the description below. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys next time.